I'm Robert, 60 years old, and I'm about to tell you how my son-in-law called my daughter Barren. Then I left an envelope at a luxury dinner that ended his lies forever. He avoided our family for months, sneered that she was barren and could never be a mother, then strutted into a luxury restaurant with his pregnant mistress. I smiled, said congratulations, and slid an envelope across the table. When he opened it, the color drained from his face like I'd just served him his own death warrant. Like this video, subscribe and comment where you're watching from, because this story will make your blood boil just like mine did. You want to know what real rage feels like? It's watching your daughter, your precious, brilliant daughter, shrink into herself because the man she trusted with her heart is systematically destroying her soul with lies. That's where this story begins, in the slow, agonizing death of a family that I watched happen meal by meal, phone call by phone call, until I couldn't stand it anymore. Emma is my only daughter, 28 years old, with eyes that used to light up rooms and a laugh that could fix whatever was wrong with your day. She married Derek 3 years ago, and I'll admit, I liked the guy initially. He had a firm handshake, looked me in the eye, called me sir without being prompted. He seemed to worship the ground Emma walked on, and honestly, that's all I wanted for her, someone who would love her the way she deserved to be loved. But people show you who they really are when they think nobody's watching. And Derek? Derek turned out to be a masterclass in deception wrapped in a 3-piece suit. It started small, the way poison always does. Sunday dinners that had been sacred in our family for decades suddenly became optional for Derek. Work emergency, he'd say, or client dinner, always with that apologetic smile that didn't reach his eyes. Then it was Emma's birthday, her 28th, and he showed up 2 hours late with flowers that still had the grocery store price tag on them. 2 hours late to his own wife's birthday, and when I asked him about it, he shrugged and said, traffic was bad. Traffic. For his wife's birthday. The phone calls stopped next. I'd call their house, and Derek would answer with this flat, distant voice. She's not available, he'd say, like I was some telemarketer instead of her father. When I'd ask when might be a good time to call back, he'd pause, this long, calculated pause, and then say, I'll have her call you. She never did, because he never told her I called. Then came the ring. Have you ever noticed how a wedding ring catches the light? How it sits on someone's finger like a promise made visible? Derek's ring started disappearing. First, it was just at the gym. Don't want to damage it, he said. Then it was at work. Professional appearance, he claimed. Pretty soon, I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen that ring on his finger at all, and when Emma asked about it, he'd get this irritated look and mutter something about having it resized. The public humiliations were the worst part, though. The absolute worst. We'd run into people at the grocery store, at church, at community events, and Derek would introduce Emma like she was a stranger. This is Emma, he'd say, never, my wife Emma, or Emma my wife. Just, this is Emma, like she was some acquaintance he'd picked up along the way. I watched my daughter's face during these moments, watched her try to smile through the hurt, watched her make excuses for behavior that had no excuse. But Derek was clever. I'll give him that. While he was emotionally dismantling my daughter, he was building a narrative, constructing a story that would make him the victim and her the problem. He started leaving things around their house, things he knew Emma would find, things designed to plant seeds of doubt about her own body. I first noticed it when I was fixing their kitchen faucet. Emma had gone to the store, and Derek's tablet was sitting on the counter, open to an article about infertility treatments. Not just any article, one specifically about women with unexplained infertility, with certain passages highlighted in yellow. When Emma came back, I watched her glance at that tablet, watched her face crumple just a little before she closed it without saying anything. Then came the pamphlets. Glossy, professional pamphlets about supporting an infertile spouse that would mysteriously appear on their coffee table, their kitchen counter, their nightstand. always open to sections about the emotional toll of childlessness and when treatments fail. Emma started carrying herself differently after those appeared, hunched shoulders, downcast eyes, like she was carrying a shame that wasn't even hers. Derek began dropping hints during family gatherings, subtle little comments designed to reinforce his carefully constructed narrative. "It's hard, you know," he'd say to my wife over coffee, his voice heavy with manufactured sorrow. "We've been trying for so long, the doctors say." Then he'd trail off, shaking his head like he was too noble to voice the terrible truth. The truth. That word tastes like acid in my mouth when I think about how he perverted it. He started talking about legacy, about the importance of carrying on family names, about how some people are just meant to be parents and others aren't. Always with this wistful, tragic air, like he was some kind of martyr suffering through his wife's biological failings. He'd look at our family photos, the ones with Emma as a baby, as a child, growing up, and he'd sigh. "Some people are just naturals with kids," he'd say. "Others." Another sigh, another shake of the head. The final straw, or what I thought was the final straw, came when he saw our family cradle. It's been in our family for 4 generations, hand-carved by my great-grandfather, worn smooth by decades of babies who grew up to have babies of their own. Emma had always loved that cradle, had played with her dolls in it as a child, had talked about her future children sleeping in it someday. Derek took one look at it and called it a museum piece we'll never use. Never use. Like my daughter was defective furniture, like her body was a broken machine that couldn't fulfill its basic function. I watched Emma's face when he said it, watched something die in her eyes, and that's when I knew I had to act. That's when the anger really started burning, not the quick flash of temper that comes and goes, but the slow, steady burn that doesn't stop until justice is served. Because here's what Derek didn't know, what he couldn't know because he'd never bothered to actually support his wife through the medical appointments he was so concerned about. Emma had been tested, recently tested, thoroughly tested, and the results were sitting in our safe on official letterhead signed by one of the best reproductive endocrinologists in the state. Emma's ovarian reserve was excellent. Her hormone levels were perfect. Her fallopian tubes were clear. Every single marker for fertility was not just normal, but optimal. The doctor had looked at her results and smiled, saying she saw no barriers to conception whatsoever. None. Zero. Emma was not, by any medical definition, infertile. But Derek didn't know that, because Derek had never been to a single appointment. He'd been too busy, he said, too many client meetings, too many work emergencies, too many convenient excuses to avoid actually supporting his wife through something he claimed to care so deeply about. That's when I started paying attention. Real attention. Not the casual notice you give to family dynamics, but the focused, intentional observation of a man who's beginning to suspect his daughter is being systematically abused. Because that's what this was. Abuse. Because that's what this was. Abuse. Psychological, emotional abuse designed to break down Emma's sense of self until she believed she was fundamentally flawed. The opportunity to learn the truth came when Derek left his briefcase at our house after one of his increasingly rare visits. Emma was at work, my wife was at her book club, and there it was, sitting on our kitchen table like a gift from the universe. The side pocket was unzipped, just slightly, and inside I could see the corner of some papers. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I'm not ashamed of it either. When someone is hurting your child, you do what you have to do to protect them. I opened that briefcase, and what I found inside made my hands shake with rage. Credit card statements, secret ones, in Derek's name only, for accounts Emma didn't know existed, charges to prenatal boutiques, hundreds of dollars worth, hotel lunches at expensive restaurants, always for 2 people, always during work hours, jewelry purchases from stores Emma had never been to, for pieces she'd never seen. Lingerie in sizes that definitely weren't Emma's. Emma was a size 6. These receipts were for size 10s and 12s. But the real smoking gun was buried deeper in the briefcase, printed emails and text message screenshots that Derek had apparently kept as some kind of trophy collection. Messages with someone named Lila from his office, and the content of those messages made me want to put my fist through the wall. "Can't wait to see you tonight, Daddy," one text read, with a photograph attached, an ultrasound image with 10 weeks written across the top in a doctor's handwriting. The subject line of the email thread was, "Our Miracle," and the messages detailed a relationship that had been going on for over 4 months. 4 months. While Derek was leaving infertility pamphlets around his house for Emma to find, he was getting another woman pregnant. While he was sighing about legacy and family names, he was creating exactly that with his mistress. While he was making my daughter believe her body was broken, he was celebrating new life with someone else. But wait, it gets worse. Much worse. Buried in another folder were Derek's own medical records, ones he'd clearly forgotten he'd printed. Records from a urologist visit 8 months earlier, before he'd even started his campaign against Emma. The diagnosis was clear: varicocele with severely compromised sperm motility. The doctor's notes were explicit: patient presents with significant fertility challenges. Surgical intervention recommended but not guaranteed to restore normal function. Current sperm count and motility levels unlikely to result in natural conception. The follow-up appointment was scheduled, but according to the records, Derek never showed up, never got the surgery, never got treatment, never even tried to address his own fertility issues. Instead, he'd taken his diagnosis and turned it into a weapon against my daughter, making her believe she was the problem when he knew that he was the one who couldn't have children. I sat in my kitchen, surrounded by evidence of my son-in-law's betrayal, and I felt something I'd never felt before. Not just anger. Anger was too small a word for this. This was rage in its purest form, the kind of fury that burns so hot it becomes cold, so intense it becomes calculating. This wasn't about justice anymore. This was about war. I photographed every single document, every credit card statement, every text message, every medical record, every receipt. I organized them chronologically, created a timeline of deception that painted a picture so clear a child could understand it. I had everything printed and bound, with tabs for each month, each category of evidence, each lie Derek had told. Then I did something that probably saved my sanity. I called our family attorney and had copies made of everything, stored in the firm's safe with instructions that they be released to Emma if anything happened to me. I wasn't taking any chances that Derek might find out what I knew before I was ready to act. The hardest part was pretending I didn't know. Going back to family dinners and listening to Derek's performance, watching him sigh about Emma's condition, listening to him talk about adoption brochures and fertility treatments, all while knowing he was lying about literally everything. The self-control it took not to grab him by the throat and shake the truth out of him was superhuman, but I had a plan that required patience, precision, and perfect timing. Because Derek had made one crucial mistake in all his scheming. He'd gotten comfortable. He thought he was smart, thought he was in control, thought nobody would ever discover his game. He was wrong. I started playing along with his narrative, even helping to reinforce it. I left adoption brochures where he'd find them, made supportive comments about exploring all options, even attended a fertility support group meeting with Emma, and kept the attendance card. Let Derek think his psychological manipulation was working. Let him believe he was successfully rewriting reality. Meanwhile, I watched him get bolder. The late nights became later, more frequent. Items started disappearing from their house: clothes, personal effects, things being moved to what I assumed was Lila's place. He stopped referring to Emma as his wife entirely, calling her by name only, like she was a roommate he was stuck with. He skipped family prayers, missed holidays, avoided any event where he might have to pretend to be a loving husband. The whole time, I was documenting everything. Every slight, every absence, every cruel comment. Building a case not just for the truth, but for the kind of emotional cruelty that would ensure Emma got everything in the divorce that was surely coming. Then Derek made his final mistake, the one that gave me the perfect opportunity to end his lies in the most public, devastating way possible. He sent me a text message on a Tuesday evening. Dinner at Aurelia, Thursday 7 p.m. Important plans. I'm bringing someone you should meet. Aurelia, the most expensive restaurant in town, the kind of place where the city's elite go to see and be seen. The kind of place where a man might take his pregnant mistress to show her off, maybe even announce their relationship publicly. The kind of place where Derek would feel confident, powerful, in control. Perfect. I confirmed immediately, then made a call to the restaurant. I'd done some work for the owner years ago, helped him with a legal issue, and he owed me a favor. I explained that I needed a very specific table, not tucked away in a corner, not hidden in a private dining room, but right in the center of the main dining area where everyone could see. The maitre d' was happy to oblige. Thursday evening came, and I arrived at Aurelia 15 minutes early. The place was packed, which was exactly what I'd hoped for. I recognized faces from around town, Derek's boss from the law firm, neighbors from our subdivision, members of our church, the president of the Chamber of Commerce. A perfect audience for what was about to unfold. Derek arrived precisely on time, wearing his most expensive suit, his arm around a woman I didn't recognize, but who was very obviously pregnant, very obviously happy, very obviously under the impression that she was about to be introduced to Derek's family as his new partner. The poor girl had no idea she was walking into her own destruction. They approached the table with Derek wearing this smug, confident smile, like he was the master of the universe presenting his latest acquisition. The woman, Lila, I assumed, looked nervous but excited, one hand unconsciously protecting her rounded belly. "Robert," Derek said, his voice carrying that false warmth he'd perfected, "I'd like you to meet Lila. We have some important news to share." I stood, smiled, extended my hand to Lila. "Congratulations," I said, and I meant it for her. She was as much a victim in this as Emma was. She just didn't know it yet. "Please, sit down, both of you." Derek was practically glowing as he pulled out Lila's chair, playing the part of the devoted father-to-be. "This is difficult," he began, launching into what was clearly a prepared speech. "But given Emma's diagnosis, her inability to conceive, Lila and I have decided to move forward together. I need a legacy, Robert. I need children to carry on my name, and Emma simply can't give me that." The words hung in the air like poison gas. Around us I could see people at nearby tables starting to pay attention, whispers beginning to spread. Derek's boss had definitely heard, his eyebrows raised in surprise. Our neighbors were leaning in, trying to catch every word. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope, thick with documents, sealed with the kind of care you'd give to evidence in a murder trial. I placed it gently on the white linen tablecloth between us, my movements deliberate and calm. "Before we talk about legacy," I said, my voice carrying just far enough for our audience to hear, "I think we should talk about truth. Derek, I want you to open this envelope. Take your time. Read everything inside, and then we'll discuss who's really unable to have children." The color started draining from Derek's face before he even touched the envelope. Some part of him, the guilty conscience he'd been suppressing, already knew what was coming. But he was trapped now, surrounded by witnesses, with no choice but to play out the scene to its conclusion. His hands shook slightly as he opened the envelope and pulled out the first document. Emma's fertility test results, complete with the doctor's letterhead, official stamp, and a summary that used words like excellent, optimal, and no barriers to conception. Derek's eyes scanned the page once, twice, 3 times, like he couldn't process what he was seeing. "That's interesting," I said conversationally, loud enough for the tables around us to hear. "It seems Emma isn't infertile after all. In fact, her fertility markers are better than average for women her age. Funny how you never bothered to attend a single appointment with her, isn't it?" Derek's mouth opened and closed without sound, but I wasn't done, not even close. "Keep reading," I instructed, and watched as he pulled out the second set of documents, his own medical records, the ones he'd tried so hard to hide. The urologist's notes, the diagnosis of severely compromised fertility, the missed follow-up appointments, the complete lack of any treatment. The silence at our table was deafening, but the whispers around us were getting louder. I could see Derek's boss leaning forward, straining to hear every word. Our neighbors had stopped even pretending to eat their dinners. "So, according to these medical records," I continued, my voice steady as a judge pronouncing sentence, "you've known for 8 months that you're the one with fertility issues, severe ones. Yet somehow, you've spent that entire time convincing my daughter that she's broken, that she's the reason you can't have children. How do you explain that, Derek?" Lila was staring at Derek now, confusion and the first hints of alarm crossing her face. "Derek," she said quietly, "what is he talking about? You told me Emma couldn't get pregnant because—" "Keep reading," I told Derek, cutting off whatever lie he was about to tell. "The credit card statements are particularly interesting. All those prenatal shopping trips, hotel lunches, jewelry purchases. Amazing how a man with no money for his wife's birthday suddenly has thousands to spend on his pregnant mistress." The envelope held more, screenshots of text messages, email threads, a complete timeline of Derek's double life laid out in devastating detail. But the final document was the one I was most proud of, the one that would end this charade forever. Derek's hand trembled as he pulled out the last set of papers, separation documents already prepared, already notarized, already filed with the court, every page marked with official stamps, every detail crafted by our family attorney to ensure Emma would be protected, financially and legally, from any further damage Derek might try to inflict. "The papers are all in order," I said, my voice now carrying clearly throughout the restaurant. "Emma's attorney will be in touch with yours tomorrow morning. Every piece of evidence in that envelope has been copied and secured. Your lies are over, Derek. All of them." That's when Lila broke. 8 months, she whispered, her hand moving protectively over her belly. "You've been lying to her for 8 months, making her think she was the problem when you knew." She looked down at her pregnant stomach, and I watched the realization hit her like a physical blow. "Derek, if you can't have children, then whose baby am I carrying?" The question hung in the air like a bomb with the pin pulled. Derek's face went from pale to gray to green, and I knew that Lila had just asked the one question he'd been praying no one would think to ask. "It might be Marcus," she said, her voice breaking. "From accounting. We were seeing each other before." She looked at Derek with growing horror. "Oh God, what have I done? What have we done?" The restaurant had gone completely silent now. Derek's boss was staring at our table with undisguised shock. Our neighbors were witnessing the complete destruction of a man's reputation in real time. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving, frozen by the drama unfolding in their dining room. I stood up slowly, straightening my jacket, leaving the envelope and all its damning contents scattered across the table like evidence at a crime scene. "Emma will be fine," I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the restaurant. "She's young, she's healthy, she's fertile, and she's finally free of a man who tried to destroy her spirit with lies. As for you, Derek, I suggest you figure out who the father of that baby really is before you start talking about legacy." I dropped $200 bills on the table, enough to cover whatever Derek and Lila had ordered, plus a generous tip for the waitstaff who'd have quite a story to tell. Then I walked out of that restaurant with my head high, leaving behind the wreckage of Derek's carefully constructed lies and the whispers that would follow him for the rest of his life in this town. The legal aftermath was swift and decisive. Our attorney had built an airtight case based on emotional cruelty, fraud, and public humiliation. Derek's law firm, horrified by the public scandal and unwilling to be associated with his behavior, quietly encouraged him to settle quickly and leave town. The separation became a divorce within 60 days, with Emma receiving a settlement that would ensure her financial security for years to come. The social consequences were even more satisfying. Word of Derek's deception spread through our community like wildfire. The church, which had been subtly pressuring Emma about her fertility issues, rallied around her with support and apologies. Friends and neighbors who had whispered about her inability to conceive now understood the truth and surrounded her with love. Derek disappeared from town within a month, reportedly taking a job in another state. Lila, poor girl, discovered through DNA testing that Marcus from accounting was indeed the father of her child. Last I heard, she'd moved back home to her parents and was raising her baby as a single mother, wiser but wounding from her encounter with Derek's poison. As for Emma, watching her heal has been the greatest gift of my life. The hunched shoulders straightened, the downcast eyes began to shine again. The laughter that had been silenced by Derek's psychological warfare slowly returned, tentative at first, then stronger with each passing day. We went to counseling together, father and daughter, working through the trauma of those awful months when I'd watched her being systematically destroyed and felt powerless to stop it. She thanked me for believing in her, for fighting for her, for never accepting Derek's narrative about her supposed inadequacy. But the truth is, she saved herself by being strong enough to survive his abuse until I could expose it. Emma has started dating again, carefully and on her own terms. She's returned to school, pursuing a master's degree she'd put on hold during her marriage. She talks about children sometimes, but now it's with hope instead of despair, with the knowledge that when she's ready, when she finds the right partner, her body will not betray her dreams. The family cradle sits in her apartment now, waiting for the grandchildren I know will come someday. Real grandchildren, born from love instead of lies, wanted by parents who will cherish them instead of using them as weapons in some twisted game of emotional warfare. People ask me if I feel guilty about what I did to Derek, about the public humiliation, about destroying his reputation and his relationship with Lila. The answer is simple. No, not for a single second. When someone tries to break your child's spirit with systematic lies, when they isolate and manipulate and abuse someone you love, you don't negotiate. You don't try to reason with them. You expose them completely and publicly so they can never hurt your family again. Truth has a way of outlasting performance. Integrity beats deception every single time, even when it takes longer than you'd like, even when the lies seem convincing, even when the person telling them is someone you trusted. Derek thought he was clever, thought he could rewrite reality to suit his needs, thought he could sacrifice my daughter's happiness for his own convenience. He was wrong. The envelope I left on that restaurant table contained more than documents. It contained justice. Justice for every night Emma cried herself to sleep believing she was broken. Justice for every family gathering Derek poisoned with his manufactured sorrow. Justice for every lie he told and every truth he twisted to serve his selfish purposes. A father's duty is protection, but protection doesn't always mean shielding your child from harm. Sometimes it means arming yourself with facts, gathering evidence, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike back against those who would hurt the people you love. Sometimes protection means going to war. That manila envelope was my declaration of war against Derek's lies, and the battlefield was a dining room full of witnesses who would carry the truth throughout our community. No rumors, no gossip, no he said she said confusion, just facts, documented and undeniable, served up on a silver platter for everyone to see. Derek wanted a legacy. He got one. Not the legacy of children and family he thought he deserved, but the legacy of a man who tried to destroy an innocent woman's sense of self to cover for his own inadequacies. That's the story people will remember, the cautionary tale they'll tell about what happens when you build your life on lies. And Emma? Emma got something better than Derek's twisted version of love. She got her freedom, her truth, and her future back. She got the chance to write her own story instead of living inside the one Derek had constructed for her. The family cradle isn't a museum piece we'll never use. It's a promise, waiting to be fulfilled by a woman who knows her own worth, who understands her own strength, who will never again let anyone convince her that she's less than she is. That's the real legacy here. Not Derek's failure, but Emma's triumph. Not the lies that were exposed, but the truth that set her free. Not the man who tried to break her, but the daughter who proved unbreakable. So if you believe that truth beats deception, that integrity matters more than appearance, that parents have a duty to fight for their children no matter the cost, then like this video, subscribe to this channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Because this story, Emma's story, our family's story, is proof that lies have an expiration date, but the truth lives forever. The envelope has been opened. The lies have been exposed. The truth has set us free. And Derek? Derek learned that when you try to destroy someone's daughter, you'd better be prepared for her father to destroy you right back.